Most people fail badly when trying to confront a narcissist because they willingly and often blindly step right into a conflict zone of the narcissist's choosing. Think about what happens when you realize you are being mistreated. Your natural instinct is to speak up. Armed with your genuine feelings, a deep sense of fairness, and a sincere wish to bring peace and calm back to the situation, you approach them. You treat the interaction like a normal, reasonable conversation between two adults who want to fix a problem. You explain how much they hurt you, you give them the benefit of the doubt, and you assume that once they see your pain, they will want to make things right. In reality, you are not having a conversation at all. You have just walked onto a psychological battlefield. Narcissists do not live in the same world you do. They live in a completely distorted reality, a deeply warped fantasy world where they are permanently cast as the heroic, deeply wrong center of the universe, and you are just a flawed, obligated side character whose only job is to serve their narrative. They do not care about your facts, your logic, or your broken heart. In fact, every single emotional outburst, every ounce of frustration, and every desperate, tearful plea from you only serves to confirm their twisted map of the world. To them, your crying or yelling is proof that you are the unstable one, which instantly makes them feel superior, calm, and completely vindicated. When you fight them using emotion, you are playing a game where they wrote the rules, they referee the matches, and they own the stadium. On their ground, they will always win, and they will leave you feeling drained, confused, and utterly defeated. The massive power shift you need only happens the exact moment you stop reacting and start responding. There is a world of difference between these two actions, and understanding that difference is your key to freedom. An emotional reaction is an uncontrolled, knee-jerk burst of energy. It is a quick jerk of the shoulder, a gasp, a defensive excuse, or a scream of frustration. When you react, you are handing your personal power over to the narcissist on a silver platter, letting them pull your strings like a puppet. A strategic response, on the other hand, is a quiet, thoughtful, and deeply grounded act of pure resolve. It is the conscious, deliberate choice to refuse to play their game, to completely burn their imaginary map, and to stand firmly on what you know is real. When you respond instead of reacting, you take all that chaotic emotional energy and lock it down. This is the precise moment where your words stop being weapons used in a screaming match and instead become your ultimate architectural tools. You begin using your words to build a massive, immovable structure of objective reality, a boundary so incredibly strong, clear, and sturdy that the narcissist's wild fantasies and gaslighting tactics simply cannot break it. To completely disarm a narcissist and take away their power over you, you must first understand exactly what powers their psychological engine. Most people assume that narcissists are highly confident, arrogant bullies who enjoy conflict. Because of this, people try to fight back with anger, or they try to appeal to the narcissist's sense of reason. But you need to know right now that they are not afraid of your anger, and they absolutely do not care about your reasoning. Your anger actually feeds them, and your reasoning bores them. What they are truly, deeply, and utterly terrified of is being genuinely seen for who they are. Their entire larger-than-life personality is nothing more than a giant, elaborate defense mechanism. It was built piece by piece, year after year, around a hidden center of profound, agonizing inadequacy and toxic shame. Think of the narcissist as a shiny, towering fortress made of mirrors and armor. It looks terrifying and impenetrable from the outside, but it was designed for one reason only: to hide a frightened, deeply hurt, and incredibly small inner child. They cannot handle the pain of their own reality, so they built a fake persona to show the world. Their absolute biggest, most paralyzing fear is that someone will walk up to that fortress, notice the tiny cracks in the wall, and catch a quick glimpse of the sad, empty reality they work around the clock to conceal. They are terrified that the world will find out they are empty inside. This is precisely why certain specific words, when you speak them calmly, slowly, and without a single hint of anger, act as immediate psychological triggers. When you look at a narcissist and state the cold, hard truth, you are not actually attacking their fortress with a battering ram. You are doing something far more powerful. You are simply shining a brilliant, blinding light directly on it and holding up a crystal clear mirror. In that mirror, the narcissist is suddenly forced to look past their own illusion and see the faint, undeniable outline of the fraud they are so terrified of being. They do not fear that you will physically hurt them, and they do not fear your insults. What they fear is your terrifying act of seeing them clearly. They fear it because it threatens to destroy the fragile survival illusion they depend on just to breathe, leaving them completely exposed to their own self-hatred. Setting a firm boundary with your words is an act of supreme self-control and self-love. It is never an act of aggression. It is vital that you understand the difference between these two concepts, because the narcissist will always try to convince you that your boundaries are an attack on them. Aggression is an ugly, messy attempt to control, manipulate, or actively hurt someone else to force them to do what you want. Assertive truth-telling, however, is something completely different. It is the calm, unshakable refusal to let someone else decide what your reality is. If aggression can be described as angrily stepping over the property line into a neighbor's yard to cause a scene, setting a boundary is standing with both feet planted firmly on your own ground, looking them in the eye, and stating calmly, "You are not allowed to cross this line." You aren't changing them, you are protecting yourself. However, the specific words you choose to use are only half of the solution. The actual power, the real weight of the boundary, comes entirely from your tone of voice. Think of it this way. A boundary that is yelled in a fit of screaming anger is not a boundary at all. It is an open invitation to a massive fight. When you yell, you are broadcasting to the narcissist that you are still deeply trapped in their territory of raw emotion, which means they still control you. But a boundary that is stated with the absolute ice-cold, quiet finality of a mathematical fact is something a narcissist's mind simply cannot handle. Imagine stating that 2 + 2 = 4. You don't scream it, you don't cry about it, and you don't beg the other person to agree with you. You just state it because it is an absolute truth. When you speak to a narcissist with that exact same level of quiet confidence, your calm voice becomes a terrifying mirror reflecting their inner chaos right back at them. It forces an immediate, massive psychological shift in the dynamic. In that single moment, you completely stop being a helpless pawn in their twisted game, and you instantly become the sole author of your own story. One of the most damaging lies you can tell yourself after dealing with a manipulator is that you were chosen because you are weak, broken, or easy to fool. This could not be further from the truth. Narcissists do not target you because you are weak. They target you because they sense, with predator-like accuracy, that you possess something incredibly rare and beautiful that they desperately want but can never truly hold: authentic self-worth and inner light. Their choice to bring you into their life was never an accident. It was a highly calculated, subconscious hunting plan. Like an apex predator standing on a hill watching a large herd of animals, they do not waste their time looking for the weakest, sickest members of the group. They scan the herd looking for the strongest, healthiest, most energetic individuals, because those are the ones that offer the biggest, most sustaining reward. They want to attach themselves to a high-value source of life. There are three very specific, beautiful human qualities that make you highly appealing to a toxic manipulator, and they are the exact same qualities you probably consider your greatest strengths: your empathy, your beautiful ability to deeply understand other people, to feel their pain, and to constantly give them the benefit of the doubt, is viewed by a narcissist not as a virtue, but as an open, unguarded door. They see your empathy as a golden ticket that will allow them to mistreat you and get away with it because they know you will make excuses for them. Your competence, your talents, your life skills, your professional success, and your personal discipline are incredibly valuable resources. The narcissist wants to slide into your life and completely take over those resources, stealing the credit for your hard work to support their own crumbling illusion of personal importance. Your integrity. Because you are a deeply honest, decent, and good-hearted person, you naturally assume that the rest of the world operates the exact same way. This makes it almost impossible for you to imagine that someone could look you in the eye and act entirely without a conscience, which gives the narcissist a massive head start in manipulating you. The narcissist enters your world because they want to completely consume your light, to feed off your energy, and to use your goodness to fill their own bottomless void. And if they realize they cannot fully possess or control your light, their strategy instantly shifts. They will try to completely destroy it, breaking you down so that your vibrant, joyful existence stops reminding them of their own empty, dark core. A narcissist never walks into your life on day one and violently smashes your boundaries to pieces. If they did, you would run away immediately. Instead, they test your limits with incredibly subtle, quiet, and carefully disguised psychological probes. It almost always starts with something so small that you barely even register it as a threat. It might look like a slick, backhanded compliment that leaves you scratching your head, a casually forgotten promise that they dismiss as an accident, or a sharp, mean-spirited joke made at your expense over dinner. Each and every one of these tiny violations is actually a quiet psychological experiment designed to ask a silent, dangerous question. Will you tolerate this? If you decide to just laugh it off, ignore it, or let it go specifically to keep the peace and avoid making a scene, you have just unknowingly handed them the master map to your boundaries. They will take that data, analyze it, and immediately use it to plan a slightly larger violation. This is exactly how the forgotten promise quickly escalates into a totally broken agreement, and how the sarcastic private joke smoothly transforms into a deeply humiliating public insult. This slow, calculated, and gradual wearing down of your personal standards is what creates the toxic disrespect cycle. When you choose to ignore a small violation because you are tired and don't want to cause tension, that offensive behavior instantly becomes the brand new minimum standard for how you are allowed to be treated in the relationship. You have taught them what they can get away with. The next violation will always be slightly bigger, training you step by step, week by week, to accept things that you would have previously found completely unacceptable. Because the human mind is wonderfully built to adapt to its surroundings to survive, this constant, exhausting state of walking on eggshells eventually starts to feel like your normal daily life. Over time, you completely forget what it actually feels like to be treated with basic human decency, respect, and kindness. Good, caring, and deeply compassionate people struggle immensely to notice this invasive process while it is happening. They struggle because they constantly project their own decency, kindness, and morals onto the manipulator. When the narcissist acts cruel, the empathetic person assumes they must just be having an incredibly bad day, or they are just stressed about work. This constant making of excuses leads you directly into a state of debilitating, exhausting self-doubt. You stop trusting your own eyes and ears, and you begin constantly asking yourself questions like, am I being too sensitive? Or, did I overreact? This is, without a doubt, the narcissist's most brilliant and effective psychological trick. They successfully convince you that the root problem is never their toxic behavior, but rather your natural reaction to their behavior. By turning your thoughts against you, they make you a completely unreliable narrator in your own life, trapped inside a thick, disorienting fog of manipulation where up is down and left is right. But the human spirit can only be compressed so far before it fights to break free. Eventually, if you stay in this environment, you will inevitably hit a definitive breaking point. This happens when the narcissist commits a violation that is so massive, so incredibly cruel, and so undeniably toxic that it completely shatters the fog of manipulation in a single second. You open your eyes and realize with absolute, unshakable certainty that the situation is never going to fix itself, that the narcissist is never going to magically change, and that any real change in your life must begin entirely with you. You realize you have to save yourself. The following 7 powerful statements are not meant to be used as petty insults, and they are definitely not designed to be used as angry attacks. Instead, they are highly precise, incredibly sharp tools of objective truth. They are designed for one purpose only: to help you stand your ground, cut through the manipulation, and firmly establish reality on your terms. The 7 statements that disarm narcissism. 1. I see what you are doing. A manipulator thrives almost entirely on their ability to hide in the shadows, masking their true intentions behind subtle put-downs, passive-aggressive remarks, and innocent-sounding questions. They rely on the fact that you will overlook their behavior, make excuses for them, or spend hours trying to figure out what they actually meant. When you look a narcissist dead in the eye and say, I see what you are doing, you instantly cut through that thick fog of confusion. The true magic of this statement is that you do not need to explain yourself, and you absolutely should not detail exactly what it is you see. If you start listing examples, they will just argue with your examples and gaslight you into thinking you misunderstood. The immense power of these words lies entirely in the heavy uncertainty of your awareness. By refusing to elaborate, you leave them guessing about exactly how much of their game you have figured out. It communicates a crystal clear message. The game is officially over. It shines a blinding spotlight on their hidden tactics and exposes them completely, which instantly triggers their deepest, most paralyzing fear of being truly seen as a fraud. 2. That is not my responsibility. Narcissists routinely and systematically hand off the crushing weight of their personal failures, their foul moods, and their incredibly chaotic lives, fully expecting you to carry the burden for them. If they lose their keys, it is your fault for cluttering the house. If they fail at work, it is your fault for distracting them. When you calmly and repeatedly use the phrase, that is not my responsibility, you are handing that heavy emotional weight right back to its rightful owner. For a deeply caring, empathetic person, saying these words can feel incredibly difficult at first because your natural instinct is to rush in, fix the problem, and make everyone feel better. However, you must quickly learn the massive difference between genuinely helping someone and dangerously enabling their bad behavior. Refusing to carry their emotional baggage is a supreme act of self-preservation. It forces the narcissist to stop using you as a psychological dumping ground and compels them to finally stand face-to-face with the real, unvarnished results of their own poor choices. 3. I will not be spoken to that way. It is vital to understand that this statement is an absolute rule, not a polite request. You are not begging them to treat you better, and you are not asking for permission to be respected. unexpected. You are drawing a massive, unshakable line in the sand against their escalating disrespect, and it must be spoken with the calm finality of a judge delivering a verdict rather than in a fit of fiery anger. When you scream or show anger, it signals to the narcissist that your feelings are deeply hurt, which gives them a massive ego boost and invites them to drag you into a toxic screaming match. Anger tells them they have successfully hooked you. On the other hand, stating this boundary with a quiet, steady, and unbothered tone of voice establishes a wall that requires no further explanation whatsoever. You don't need to argue about why their tone was bad. You just declare that basic human respect is the absolute, non-negotiable price of admission for interacting with you. And if they cannot pay that price, they lose access to you. 4. Your feelings about this are not my problem. Narcissists treat their emotions like weapons, using explosive rage, dramatic tears, and elaborate displays of victimhood as highly calculated strategies to control your daily behavior. They deliberately create an emotional fire in the room because they want you to panic and rush around trying to put it out, completely forgetting about your own needs in the process. They want you to believe that you are solely responsible for keeping them emotionally stable. The moment you utter the words, "Your feelings about this are not my problem," you cleanly and permanently sever that manipulative connection. This phrase is an incredibly powerful declaration of your own emotional independence. It draws a thick line between where your feelings end and where theirs begin. By saying this, you completely refuse to be their emotional caretaker, forcing them to sit entirely alone with their own raging internal chaos, instead of allowing them to use that chaos as a tool to bend you to their will. 5. I do not need to justify myself to you. In a typical, exhausting argument with the manipulator, the narcissist will automatically appoint themselves as the supreme prosecutor, instantly placing you on a metaphorical witness stand where you are forced to desperately defend your decisions, your friendships, and your sanity. They want you to feel like you are on trial. The trap here is that the more you over-explain, apologize, or try to prove your innocence, the more raw ammunition you are handing them to twist your words and use them against you later. This phrase is your absolute, definitive refusal to ever take the witness stand again. When you say, "I do not need to justify myself to you," you are letting them know that the court is officially adjourned. It signals that you are the ultimate, undisputed authority in your own life, and that your choices do not require their validation, their understanding, or their permission to be real and valid. 6. This conversation is over. This statement is your ultimate, non-negotiable emergency exit when a discussion inevitably devolves into a circular, exhausting, and completely nonsensical speech meant solely to confuse, disorient, and dominate you. You have likely experienced those hours-long arguments that go in circles until your head spins and you forget what you were even talking about. You need to remember that you are under absolutely no obligation to sit quietly and act as an audience for their twisted, toxic logic. Saying this phrase and then immediately and physically removing yourself from the room or hanging up the phone is how you back up your verbal boundary with real action. It proves to the narcissist that you are no longer just talking about boundaries, you are actively living them. It shows them in real time that your precious time, your mental energy, and your peace of mind will never again be wasted on harmful, going nowhere interactions. 7. I am not interested in your opinion of me. This final statement delivers the ultimate fatal blow to the entire narcissistic dynamic. The narcissist's power over your life relies completely on a very specific hierarchy. They must always be the all-knowing judge, and you must always be the anxious defendant who terrifically fears their disapproval and constantly seeks their praise. The second you declare that their personal opinion of you is completely irrelevant, you instantly bankrupt their entire psychological system. You take away the only currency they have. This is not a petty insult shouted in the heat of a fight. It is a beautifully calm, deeply grounded statement of achieved self-validation. It shows the narcissist that you have successfully built your own internal moral compass, that you know exactly who you are, and that you have completely stopped looking to a broken, toxic person for a reflection of your true worth. Their words no longer have the power to touch you. These 7 phrases are uniquely devastating to a narcissist because they do not just challenge their behavior, they completely destroy the fundamental core lie upon which their entire personality was built. A narcissist does not possess a healthy, stable core identity. Instead, they operate entirely through a grand, wildly inflated false self. This false self is an elaborate, artificial psychological mask designed solely to project an image of perfection and to constantly seek outside approval, admiration, and control, a psychological fuel known as narcissistic supply. Because this entire internal structure is a complete illusion, it has absolutely no solid foundation inside the narcissist. It is like a massive balloon that requires a constant, never-ending stream of external validation just to stay inflated and survive. Because of this intense internal fragility, a simple boundary or a calm refusal to cooperate is never just a minor disagreement to a narcissist. It is experienced as an existential, catastrophic, structural threat. When you courageously use these precise statements of truth, you are making a conscious choice to completely stop providing the blind worship and emotional reactions that their false self desperately needs to exist. While a truly confident, healthy person relies on a deep internal source of self-worth that cannot be shaken by outside opinions, a grandiose narcissist is entirely, terrifyingly dependent on the reactions and submission of the people around them. Your calm, unshakable words do not challenge their actual strength. Rather, they instantly expose their absolute, terrifying internal weakness. By refusing to absorb their drama, you force their own projected chaos right back onto them, leaving them to crumble inside the empty fortress of their own making.